So many of us are seeking a deeper understanding of the physical and unseen world around us, while trying to connect and understand ourselves. Seeking enlightenment, understanding of the paranormal, holistic options, whole body healing, the metaphysical, and finding a personal connection to a higher consciousness. Together, we will journey and seek understanding of our own soul's fulfillment and that which lies beyond the veil. If you found yourself here, trust this is the next step in your spiritual journey. Welcome to Soul Flight.
Hello, everybody. Thank you so much for tuning in today to Soul Flight. It's always great to be back here and talk to you guys. I really think you are going to enjoy today's guest. But before I tell you about him, we've kind of made a habit of starting the show out with a postcard from Spirit. So prior to coming in, I pulled a card for everybody, and I hope you find that it resonates with you. Today's card says, "You are pure joy." And here's the message. Dear you, now is one of those times you're being asked to add some distance. Take a step back and do nothing but observe. Don't worry about how long it will take to regroup. Just know it's temporary and actually an opportunity to take a breath, slow down, and look at how far you've come. Decisions for the highest good are made when you have clarity, which comes from being open to information from both the intellect and the intuition. When you step into the role of observer, it's as if you turn on a switch that allows your soul to be an essential part of the information gathering and decision-making process. In this way, you can approach things from a more neutral and non-judgmental place. We know you'll make the right choice. Trust us when we say, now is not the time to get too close to the fray. Step back. You will be glad you did. So I hope that finds the recipient tonight, or that somebody finds some inspiration in that. Hey, Jackie. Hey, Michael. Thank you both for tuning in. I'm really glad that you're both here tonight. So tonight's guest, I actually had the opportunity to meet him in some of the classes that I was taking, and is such a nice guy, but he has an extraordinary story. And I don't want to give out too much, but he's going to fill us all in, I promise you. He is the author of the book Ever Near. My lighting is a little off, so it makes it a little bit hard to see, but Ever Near. And I would really like you to help me welcome my guest today, Tim Bair. Hi, Tim.
Hi, how are you?
I am so well. I am so excited to finally be doing this with you and having you here.
I'm thrilled to be here. I've been looking forward to it for actually since before I asked if you would like to listen to my story. So
no, I love it. Thank you. I think that people are really going to enjoy this because, and I want you to give it away, but to me, it's just so extraordinary because up until you go through these things in the book, I think you would have just classified yourself as a regular, average, everyday guy.
Oh yeah. I knew that I had some awareness. Maybe other people didn't have,
right?
But it was easy to dismiss as just being able to read the room, or
right.
And with my upbringing, it was like that was nothing beyond that was really allowed. So
right, it was that aptitude, that being able to pick up on body language,
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. I think it goes to this point though, and I think everyone, as we get into your story, will appreciate this. We always say everybody has some kind of abilities, but we pass it off. We don't look further. And I think this attests to that. So a lot of people here are new to you and new to your story. Can you tell us about you?
Sure. I was raised in a very fundamentalist Christian household that did not possess any of the belief system behind the behavior. It was a very confusing childhood. And through that process, over the years, I became more and more disillusioned about that. Right. The story is actually about my journey to find who became my wife.
Yes.
We use terms like soulmate and things like that.
Right.
It's actually it seems a lot more profound than that,
Yeah.
than that label. We met in church. We were married to other people
Okay.
and immediately recognized each other. It was
Yeah.
just, and I was in a place where I just denied that that was possible.
Right.
And she pretty much accepted it. It took us 4 years and a lot of bad things happening in both our lives for us to
Right.
figure out that um, if we were going to survive our adult lives,
Yeah.
we needed to do it together.
Twin flame. I like that. Spooky says, like a twin flame.
Yeah, yeah, and again, so many people have different ideas about the different labels, so it's hard to nail it down. But from the very beginning, we knew we had been together before. The group of people we were with constantly joked that we would be not only would we get together, but we would they would all be working for us at some point.
Interesting.
You know,
And
so
how do you, I'm curious. Hi, Michelle. Thank you for tuning in. Because I know you said, that very fundamentalist upbringing.
mhm.
And how did you deal with that? Was that the first time you had really recognized with another person having that lifetime before, having that deep connection?
Yes, yes, it was. I had friends that you meet somebody and you just know them,
Right.
you know, and that happened several times before, but this was something much deeper,
Yeah.
and it required an eventual shift in what we believed. And
Right.
even with that new belief, we still had the vocabulary of our childhood, so
Absolutely.
we were not able to describe it, especially to anybody else who was still in that thinking.
Oh, for
Um,
sure. Yeah.
because the words that came out of our mouths to describe something new were the same words that they used in their old dogma. So
Right.
it was really hard to explain what was going on.
I understand that. I grew up in I wouldn't say overly religious based family, but there definitely were aspects of that in my family. And same thing, a lot of this, it just went without talking about.
Right.
It just wasn't discussed. It was considered taboo.
Yeah, yeah. If I had openly embraced the kind of life I have now,
Right.
in even as a young adult, there would have been interventions in my life. I would have found myself locked up in a room with a bunch of church people.
Right.
Um,
Right.
so it was that kind of upbringing. Um, and when Marilyn and I actually finally did get together, the church asked us to leave in a very
Yeah.
odd way. It was really
Wow.
weird.
Wow.
Yeah. They told us that we had to come back to our families, to our church, and pretend like nothing had happened, but what we did in our private lives was fine. Which,
Wow.
yeah, which
Wow.
was the kind of lying to yourself that we were trying to avoid. That
Yeah.
was the
And
basis. Yeah, it was hard.
it
Um,
is. And not just lying to yourself, but if in that belief of there being a higher power, you're then lying and you don't have integrity with that higher power. You're just
right.
putting on a show.
It was such a blow to how we saw ourselves believing that it was it, it was it was a sad day, but it was also one of the lightest days we've ever experienced because it just lifted that weight right off of us.
It broke those chains.
Yeah, immediately we were able to be a spiritual team and not a
Right.
religious team, and it was um,
And that's quite a shift, moving out of a religious mind frame to a spiritual mind frame. And
yeah.
how, as you guys went through that journey, how did that spiritual journey really change for you?
Um, Initially, and it's in the book, we had long commutes to work from um, up in the high desert of California, Lancaster, down into LA. So it was an
Okay.
hour. Sometime on a bad day, it could be 2.5 hours one way.
Wow. Yeah.
Um, so we had needed to do something. We had kids in the back doing homework, but we started listening to books on tape. And while we were
Right.
in Barnes and Noble one day, we found Conversations with God had just been released on
Okay.
cassette tape, and we listened to it. And it's only a five hour book on tape.
Wow.
Um, So it only took like 2 days to listen to the whole thing the first time. The second
Okay.
time, the second time it took 6 months or more to
Right.
listen just to the dialogue that he was presenting, because we would pause it and discuss that phrase or sentence or paragraph for
Right.
maybe 2 or 3 days
Wow.
between us, so that we understood um, first what it meant and
Right.
why it was that it felt like we were remembering something that we didn't know.
That's very interesting. And I laugh because as you're talking about that, Spookies had jumped in and he said his wife and him have a joke of having many lifetimes together where she's correcting him. So I just thought that was kind of funny. But
Oh yeah, it is very much that. I get ridiculed all the time, so I'm
yeah.
fine with that at this
No,
point.
and he says though that he does absolutely relate to the understanding of the greater good coming at a higher price.
Yeah, we were determined to. Well, we could see that religious dogma was part of our generational problems.
Right.
So each generation, and I could see clear back to my great great grandparents. I was alive when they were. I knew them.
Wow.
So I could tell that each generation was getting further and further and further from the faith of what was being taught,
Right.
and more behavior based. And I was basically raising my children the same way my great 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 grandparents did about the Civil War era.
Wow.
So
Wow.
it was really getting difficult. And
Talk
so
about
that was,
generational enlightenment.
yeah, it was like, if we don't do something, our kids are really going to be messed up.
Right.
Um, and there were some other things. I don't know how far you've gotten in the book, but I talk about my daughter being molested by my
Yes.
cousin, and that was basically the day my first marriage died.
Wow.
Because my then wife kept it from me for a year and a half, and
Wow. How
told
heartbreaking. And
yeah,
how
told my
heartbreaking
daughter
because you
not to
couldn't be
speak
there for
about it.
your child. Yeah.
Yeah, I didn't know anything about it, and it was that trauma to her that pretty much imploded my life.
Wow. Yeah. And I could understand that. Absolutely. And as you know, and that's not the only trauma, that happened along the way that brought you to where you are now.
Oh no. Um, we had these concurrent um, challenges floating around us the whole time. First,
Right.
two divorces
Right.
um, with horrible child uh, custody fights.
Yes.
And our exes tag teamed us. They were friends.
Oh,
It was, they felt it was their job to make sure we had no friends, no money, no
yeah.
nothing, that we were
To
just,
isolate you. They're really trying
yeah,
to isolate you.
yeah, we lost every single one of our friends, everyone.
Wow. And that's so
Um,
unfortunate because, when we're going through things, and I understand caring about people, but, I never understood why people pick sides. If you truly care about people, how you get wrapped
yeah,
up in some of these agendas.
uh, the reason it happened to us so much was her first husband was a very narcissistic, controlling, frightening person. He
Okay.
could laugh off things, but he gathered the entire church around him for
Wow.
support, and they all just stayed with that. And we
Yeah.
were out on our own. Marilyn didn't have a job. I was working for minimum wage, maybe 60 or 70 hours a week.
Right.
So it was a tough several years. And
Yes.
then, just as we were getting comfortable and situated with that, I fell and had
Okay.
a pretty serious injury. Um, that was pretty traumatic to us.
Right.
You know, it put me in I spent several years in a wheelchair.
Wow.
Um, I in one quick instant, I destroyed 3 levels of my lower back. All the discs were just mush.
And how quickly life changes.
Yeah, yeah. And personally, for me, I went from being 40 years old to 70 years old,
Right.
in faster than you could blink. Um,
Right.
you know, but but I would not have survived that injury without Marilyn. And I
Yes.
know that because one of Marilyn's best friends by that time was actually her assistant at her job. And her brother was going through the same back surgery as I was going through.
Wow.
And he is still immobile and in a wheelchair. And the difference
Wow.
is who we had as a support system.
Yeah. That's crazy. And when we look at, and I think this is a really valuable lesson in the scheme of life, how quickly things change. But all those things that are important, the motivations behind us, the support systems, the things that keep us on our feet, that help us keep fighting.
Yeah, what we learned through that, and it's actually helping now, is that we could have a loving, intimate relationship and not have to touch each other. Because I was in so
Right.
much pain. I literally,
Right.
if she was in bed with me, I could feel her breathe, and it was excruciating.
Wow.
So we learned, and that's been since the year 2000. So for
Okay.
the last 11, 12 years of our marriage, I was in that place, and then she
Yeah.
became ill, and that even further
Right.
separated us physically. But we
Yes.
learned that wasn't necessary.
Right. Right. And it's interesting when there's obviously different ways to connect with people, but being
Uh-huh.
able to connect on that deeper level really does make a big difference.
Yeah, yeah. And what I've learned now is how we've always felt about each other, even from that brief meeting in church 4 years,
Right.
5 years before we were married. Um, how we feel about each other has never changed, just
Yeah.
never changed. The evolution is how we experience that relationship,
Right.
and that is ongoing. The evolution in that everything is changing, but it's not at the base level. Our love for each other has not changed one iota.
Right. And kind of going back, Spookies has a question going back a little bit, when you were talking about the generational gaps. And they ask, do you believe that you reached a point of understanding that could transcend those generational gaps? And they say, we work within parental alienation groups. This is an unbelievable, important problem.
What we found with regard to breaking that generational pattern
Right.
was that it had to be being thrown out of the church was the biggest blessing for our children.
Yeah.
It really was, because it allowed us to give them the space to be whoever they wanted.
Right.
We put no restrictions on their beliefs at all, and supported them in everything they did. And so we, in almost one instant, broke those generational things. We made these transitions. For us, we knew that they were large transitions, but they were nearly effortless for us.
Right.
Um,
Right.
because it was like being together was kind
Yes.
of a superpower that nothing touched us. We went through all the drama and all the trauma of everything. We felt
Right.
that, but we could always come together, and even just sitting in on a couch 2 feet apart, we were together, and it surpassed and eliminated those feelings. And it allowed us to be able to raise 5 of the 6 kids, becoming exactly who they wanted to be, with full
Right.
support. So,
Right.
um,
That's beautiful.
yeah, like I said, that is probably our greatest achievement. Writing a book is cool, but
Right.
seeing five grown adults believing what they believe, with right now 13 grandchildren being raised
Wow.
in that environment. We
Yeah.
believe that the changes we made in our behavior would take generations to correct the problem in our family,
Yeah.
and it actually took place in just one generation. We're done. We've done it.
And that's beautiful. And I wonder, and we haven't talked about the trauma that kind of brought you full circle to where you are now. But do you think, with the allies, I'll just leave it that way until we progress into your story, that you have now on the other side have helped support that generational healing?
I really think so. My kids know what I've done. They know that
Yeah.
I am in constant communication with their mom.
Yeah.
They don't feel that way. They
Right.
don't even believe that way. But because we taught them that it was okay for people to believe different things,
Right.
there's no judgment either way. It's
I love
this is
that.
your thing, and they actually know that Marilyn is in their lives and watching them
Right.
and guiding them, but they don't have a direct conversation. If that
Right.
makes sense.
It does. It does. And I think, a lot of people, and I know even people in my life that have experienced loss, it's kind of that same feeling. They accept that the involvement in our lives goes on, but they don't have like the everyday conversations that you may have, or that there's people in my life that I converse with that are on the other side very regularly. But they do feel life transcends, and there's
Yeah,
still that
yeah.
involvement.
They definitely have an awareness that she is, actually guiding them.
Yeah,
And sometimes they just feel like they're parroting, what would she have done in this situation?
I love that.
But my understanding of that is that she's actually helping them make the decision.
And that's exactly how I was feeling. I think we are so quick to dismiss when you're in that thought process of what would mom do or what would grandma do. And you might get a little bit of them back in your answer and in how you feel. And to me, that is very much them helping guide the way.
Oh, I believe it absolutely. And to me, it doesn't really matter if they are fully aware of her presence.
Right.
If their life is easier because they think that way, that's great. That's
Yeah,
enough. That's enough for me.
absolutely. I love that. We're going to take our quick station break. But when we come back, I'd like to talk about how your communication evolved
Okay.
and what that looks like for you now. But we'll be back in just about 2 minutes.
Are you interested in the paranormal, ghosts, spirits, and the metaphysical? How about Mothman, Bigfoot, and other cryptids? What about UFOs, UAPs, and other anomalous phenomenon? Then you need to check out Cryptids, Anomalies, and the Paranormal Society. We have all that and more. Watch our series Caps Road Trip, where we travel across the U.S. in search of these phenomena and bring you not only the history of these locations, events, and encounters, but evidence that we capture along the way. Alongside our team of researchers and investigators, you never know who will be joining in on the investigations. Are you interested in Bigfoot in Upper Michigan? Check out Finding Heighton, a series documenting the Sasquatch activity on a very special 80-acre property just outside of Menominee that has been a hotspot since 2012. Want even more? Check out our podcasts. Whispers from the Dark is the official podcast of Cryptids, Anomalies, and the Paranormal Society, and brings you interviews with the top names in the field of paranormal to cryptids and more. Hear witnesses' accounts and go in depth with the CAPS team to hear more about our ongoing research. Are you more into cryptids? Find links to our All Cryptid show, Monsters on the Edge, on the Untold Radio Network. If you're into spooky, subscribe now and you won't miss a minute of our brand new series coming soon, Spirits of Macville. Follow along as we uncover the haunted history dating back to 1877 of a very well-known location you may have never guessed would be haunted. Head on over to YouTube and hit that subscribe button and you won't miss a minute.
Hey everybody, welcome back to Soulflight. If you are just tuning in, I am sitting down talking to author Tim Bair, and I really hope if you are just tuning in, you'll jump back into the earlier part of the show because we've had some great conversation. But we're talking about now the aspect of how your communication changed and how you became open to the process that now is your relationship with your wife?
Sure. Marilyn became ill in early 2016 with gastric cancer.
Okay.
And the two of us were aware, even before we went to a doctor, that this was the beginning of the end of her physical life.
Right.
Before we knew it was cancer, we just knew she was sick, and we just knew. So that was kind of the beginning. During that period of time, it took 15 months for her to pass. And we spent quite a bit of time talking about what my life would be like afterwards.
Right.
She wrote down the type of property I should buy when the home we were in became too much for me to handle. So we were already talking about what life would be like together after she passed. The one thing we forgot to do was figure out how.
Yeah.
And that journey was frustrating, but it was only a week long.
Wow.
I started thinking, we should have talked about this part a little bit more.
Right.
It was kind of like I had a cell phone in my hand and absolutely no service.
Yeah.
And I knew that the thing worked. I just didn't know how. So with her memorial service coming up, I decided I need to prepare the backyard because all 5 of the 6 kids were going to be staying at our home.
Okay.
And I just felt that I should go back to where our spiritual beginning was, where we talked about earlier, the tape, Conversations with God. I went and actually found the cassette tape.
Wow.
And it was so brittle, I was afraid to touch it. And I didn't have a cassette player.
I was going to say in 2016, I'm surprised if you could play it.
Yes, I was afraid. I was afraid that if I put it in anything, it would just shatter it. So I went online and downloaded the book in audio form, put my earbuds in, went outside.
Yeah.
And 20 minutes into that, I heard an audible voice behind me outside of the earbuds. And I thought the neighbors were out there doing something.
Right.
And then I heard it again, and I got this really weird shiver.
Yeah.
And I took my earbuds off, and I heard out loud, audibly, Marilyn's voice, "Where have you been? I've missed you."
Oh, it gives me goosebumps.
Right. And it just kind of just buckled me right there. I just had to sit down for quite a while. And from that point, we actually started having literally moment-to-moment conversation. It was that quick. I found that it was easiest at that time for me to talk to her when I was outside. Okay. And from the injury we spoke of earlier, I don't sleep all that well. So it was really easy for me to wake up at 2 a.m. And when it would be an overwhelming feeling like there was no air in the house. I had to get outside.
Wow.
So we would go for walks and we would talk. We actually argued about,
I love it,
about getting my dog.
Oh, I love it.
She wanted me to have a dog, and I just did not want to. It was too much. The dog that we had together, her dog had passed, had just gone out in the backyard and pretty much died.
Oh.
A few months after she had passed. So I didn't want a dog, and she convinced me. Actually, I thought I had tricked her. I was going to go online and not be able to find one. And of course, the first dog that I found was this guy.
Yes.
So that didn't work out. Apparently, you really can't trick people.
No, especially when they're on the other side.
On the other side, folks that are enlightened tend to just know.
Yes.
And that entire story is quite miraculous. I wrote a fairly lengthy blog on it on my website.
And which I shared for anybody listening. It's timbair6.com, and it is in the comments. So please stop over and check that out. I just
so we were just chatting and walking and talking every morning, but it became obvious I needed to sell the larger property and move out here to Palm Springs, where it was slower paced, less expensive. The proceeds from the house would be able to help me afford some help. So keeping and things like that, I could afford to get help. Landscaping, heavy work, I could get help. And when I moved, the move nearly physically killed me. It was so painful.
Wow.
That once I got into this home, I could barely get to the kitchen, let alone go on these early morning walks.
Right.
I would wake up and I would still have this compelling feeling to go, but I was in so much pain I could barely put my shoes on.
Oh,
Partway into that, a month or so of that, I woke up one morning. It was the same compelling sensation, but instead of feeling like I had to go outside for a walk, it was go sit down and pick up a pen and paper.
right.
That was in May of 2020. And I wrote a couple of, it felt chunky and
Right.
the
Right.
sentences are not well put together. And I wrote 4 or 5 letters between May and September. I had a session with a medium out here that I really love to watch, Jennifer Schaefer.
Okay.
And the first words out of her mouth was, "You're writing from spirit, and you're going to write at least 6 books."
I love it.
And it was like, oh no.
You're like, don't you love when it's a great message, but you're like, oh, don't tell me that. It sounds
That's
like
exactly, and Jennifer and I, when I have a session with her, it's like going on date night, because both of us are talking to Marilyn. We're all joking. We're having fun.
right.
I don't have a need to know if you're a good medium or not.
Right.
I mean, I don't need to check you and ask you questions for proof. I believe enough. So when I talk to somebody that I know, it really is like the 3 of us together. There was actually one point where we were almost etherically at the same moment in a historical picture of Marilyn when she was in high school. She said it was raining. Jennifer says it was a rainy day and foggy. And I said, I could actually smell the grass, and I could feel the perspiration on it. I could reach out and touch. I mean, it was really,
That's great. That gives me goosebumps.
it was really next level. So
yes.
what I found is I'm really a good expert when it comes to Marilyn. The rest of this stuff, I'm kind of still learning my way.
Right.
With definitions and what it is and what it's not.
Right.
And so the focus on writing started at that moment with Jennifer when she said, "You're going to write." And since that September 2020 session with her, we've written over 300 letters.
Wow.
The first book actually includes the total of 12 letters in their entirety as she gave them to me. The only thing that's changed in the book with her letters are occasional punctuation where I made a mistake, or like if the words were backwards and I was sounding like Yoda.
Yeah, right. Yes.
So we corrected a few of those things, but you'll find in the book 99% of what I've written is in her voice exactly as I took it.
And that's beautiful.
The book was written actually backwards. I knew that there were certain things that I needed to put in the book, certain letters I wanted to do. The process of choosing 15 or 20 from 300 was pretty intense to boil it down to the ones that actually help tell our story, because that's what I wanted to do with the first book, was tell our story, and mostly the communication we were having at that moment. So I wrote that part, and then it required backstory, because she was referencing things that if you just read what she said, it would make no sense. So I ended up writing almost 150 pages of backstory. So
she kind of guided you in the composition by the content of what she was talking about. Right.
And so the process now has evolved. Initially, it was I needed to feel sort of compelled to get there and write. I had to have this overwhelming feeling, and sometimes it would be as soon as I would get up, it was like I had to move fast. I was almost running through the house to get to the chair and write. It is not that anymore. It is I could be done with the show, and I could sit down. I could go myself, sit down, and we could have a conversation that was profound and meaningful. Sometimes it's just to me, sometimes it's about our kids, but sometimes it's meant for a much wider audience.
And do you think that you now have that openness? I don't want to say ability, because that was always there, but that openness now to where you can put out, hey, I'm ready to talk, and let that flow in. Do you think that's come over time as you have conversed?
Yeah, it's at first even in the first letter, I actually said, "Can I ask a question?" And what I heard was, "Shush, I'm talking. You'll get a chance later."
I love it.
And so it took probably 15, 18 months before it was actually a conversation in our
Right.
writing. Um, and things would happen while I would be writing. Typically I'd turn my music stream way down. I want to be able to hear it in the background. It helps Bear relax.
Right.
But it's down low enough I can't hear it. I would be writing on a certain topic, and it would feel like the volume was turned up and the song that would be playing would be exactly referencing what we were talking about.
Yeah, that makes sense.
And of course the volume didn't go up. It's just
Right.
my awareness was so open at that moment that I could actually hear
It
lyrics.
floods in.
Yeah. And that happens all the time. Sometimes it's something that comforts me.
Yeah.
Not as much anymore. I mean, in real terms, we actually went through the grieving process together. We had 15
Right.
months knowing what was going to happen.
Yes.
So the moment she passed, our daughter was devastated. My mom was there. She was emotionally challenged, and I was pretty much okay.
Yeah.
I was kind of experiencing the process. I mean, my
Right.
daughter even had to say, "Hey, don't you want a wedding ring? Those guys are coming." So I
Yeah.
was just kind of enjoying the process and
Right.
being with her. And it already felt like I was with her,
Right.
even though what I was looking at wouldn't lead someone to believe that.
And what would you tell, because a lot of people deal with sudden grief. A lot of people deal with, their loved ones who are home on hospice, and they have this loss, this void that they try to fill. What solace, I guess, can you give to those who are stuck in that pain, wondering, does life go on? Does it continue?
Well, the first thing is all of this is really subjective. I
Right.
can't prove it.
Right.
You can read my book and you will hear two voices.
Yeah.
You can do that. That kind of helps. But it's hard for me to say this, for me to say your loved one is right there.
Right.
And for someone in deep grief to be able to comprehend that and attach to that idea. However, my experience is they are. That's
Right.
my experience. My experience is the only thing that I have lost is being able to touch her.
Right.
Everything else has expanded beyond anything I could describe. Even the fact that while we were married and she was going to work and I was disabled and at home alone,
Yeah.
she would be gone physically from me for 8 or 10 hours a day.
Mm-hmm.
But she would come back.
Right.
Now she's with me 24/7. It is an intense, intimate feeling that I have from her that I can feel while I'm riding on a tractor.
Right.
I don't have to be in deep meditation to know that she exists and is with me and ready to joke about, how poorly I throw a Frisbee.
Right.
So it can be that intimate. And if it's for someone else's grief, I think the only thing that I could really help with is to know that it's just the death of a body.
Right.
It's that physical touch, and it is going to create a hole. There
Yes.
is no doubt. For me, I'm closer to her than if I was on the phone with her at work.
Right.
For me, but there's going to be that for someone who's in grief and feeling
Absolutely.
it deeply. They are not going to have that unless they get some assistance from someone else.
No.
Right. But it's available to them as soon as they process and get those deep emotions resolved.
Right.
And one of the best ways I've heard to do that is to try to move that deep grief into nostalgia.
Yes. Yes.
That if you can blend in an occasional joyous occasion with your deep sorrow, you may be able to find a way to allow those feelings to begin to resolve. um, they're never physically going to be in your life ever again.
Right.
And we get so used to, as people, human beings, to having things that end. You know, you read a book, it ends. You go to a movie, it ends. The show will end. And the idea of things extending beyond that is challenging. So, you know, to look at it more as a series of books. You finish this book and you transition into another book, and then transition into another book. And that evolution, maybe that helps.
Yeah, I like that. And I really want to thank you for coming on. And I hope everybody, the book is Ever Near. I really hope you will look, because it is Jennifer says this is a beautiful story, and it really is. It is just, it's a touching story. It's a story about, for me, and it's, like I said, I'm about a quarter of the way through the book, but the transcending. Love transcends. And you know what that means spiritually, and the connection that we have. How can people, I shared your website. Do you have your book listed on there if people are looking for their book?
Yeah. The book is listed there. Actually, after we released it, it went to #1 in 3 different Amazon categories.
Oh, that's amazing! Yes.
So we did pretty good. It's available at Amazon. We're working on getting the channel available so that it would be like at a Barnes and Noble on their website if you wanted to search for it. But that the process to get it to there is not just a straight shot. There's a few steps to go through, and I think we'll be done with that in a day or two.
Oh, awesome! Sending good vibes.
Yeah. I think that there was some website security things between Ingram Spark and the publisher that just weren't talking well.
Okay.
And that's okay. I don't believe it's a bad thing at all. I think everything happens in the way it's supposed to happen. And so I live a fairly stress-free life.
I love it. And it sounds like maybe there will be some more books coming in the future. We'll have to keep an eye out.
I'm actually working on the second book. Actually, almost every intuitive that I've sat with, within the first sentence or two, they always say 6 to 7 books.
Wow, you better get typing.
I know. I'm working on. I had a plan for where it was going to go, and about a month ago, I had to shift gears because something else evolved, and that book doesn't make sense at this moment. So the next book is literally Marilyn's wisdom. It's
I love it.
Some of the more profound things that she's had to say. I'll compile a book of those and do a little bit of writing in between. But that process of rereading some of this stuff, it's not heavy, but it leaves me drained.
And I could see that because it is, and you have that connection, but there's still that physical loss, and there's all the emotion of what you're trying to compile and the thought process. I could see it being a very draining.
Right. Because I read something that somebody else might go, oh, that's really profound. And I feel all the deep emotions behind getting to that point.
Right.
And I found by writing the first book that you actually go through everything that you went through.
Yes.
And the book, you should know that the book is just a fraction of what we went through.
Absolutely.
There are totally unbelievable circumstances that no one would believe if I ever wrote it unless you were there.
Right. Well, I thank you. I thank you so much for compiling this, and I'm just so excited for you and to see where all of this goes, and for sharing the story, because I think people need hope after, and in their life. And I think if anything, like you said, you can't prove, you can't make people believe this is what's going on, but it's hope, and we all need hope.
What happens is if somebody believes that I can do it, if they see that somebody else did it, maybe it just opens that door just enough for them to, they don't have to believe. They just have to accept a little bit.
Absolutely.
That maybe the song was a communication.
Right.
Maybe the bird was. If you see something that creates a moment of remembrance with your loved one, that is already the connection. You don't have to go any further than that.
No, and I love that you point that out, because, and I talk to so many people where they say, well, I just want to sign. I just want to sign. And just like you said, it could be the simplest thing. And if it puts that thought of that person in your mind, that's your sign.
Right. And it's not, if it's something you remember, that's one thing, but
Yeah.
something new, like an
Right.
experience of a song that brings you to your loved one or your loved one to you,
Right.
that's a new moment in time. That is
Absolutely.
not a memory. That's a moment now.
Yes.
And so it is already that connection. So, yeah.
No. Well, thank you. It's been a pleasure. And I hope as you continue down this road, you'll check back in and let us know how things are going with you.
I will. This is so much fun.
Oh, no, I'm so glad we got to talk. And thank you so much for coming on. And we will talk to you again soon.
Thank you.
Yeah. Bye, Tim.
Bye-bye.
I hope that you all will hop on to timbair6.com and please check out his book, Evernear. Read the stories. Like I said, I'm about a quarter away through the book and it's amazing. There are words of hope, words of inspiration, and like he said, some pretty unbelievable things. But I think it just goes to talk to the testament of time, the testament of love, and that really love can transcend a lot of things. We just have to be open to receiving love and allowing ourselves to give love. Be a great book. A great Valentine's Day is coming up, and that's all about love. So this is a great time to be thinking about love and the transcending. But before we go, I would like to pull a couple cards. I think I'm going to use the Sacred Forest Oracle deck today. I haven't used that one for a while. So I'm going to shuffle a couple of cards. While I do that, I want to let you know a couple of things coming up in the next few weeks. On the 21st, our next show coming up here in February, Jennifer Jacobs is going to be joining us. She is the founder of Eclipse Paranormal. She is the Region 2 director of the Dogman Project and the founder of Women of the Paranormal. So it's going to be very exciting to have her on. I hope you will come with all your paranormal questions, even maybe some Dogman questions. You know, I'm not usually one that gets into the cryptids, but I'm very excited to learn and to hear about these things. I'm very excited for March. Do you know why I'm excited for March? Ellie is back. We are going to be back within the mix. And for those of you who are not familiar with the previous show, Chat with Charlie, Ellie and I used to do a monthly special as part of the podcast. We'd come on, we'd talk about weird news. We would talk about things that just are kind of things people don't talk about every day. Maybe a little taboo, maybe some articles in the news. So keep an eye out for that weird news. Please email it over to me so we can look at it. Or if you have kind of a off the middle of the road topic you'd like us to look at, you can always email me at stephanielynspiritsensitive.com. I will watch for those emails. On the 20th of March, we have Dr. Rita Louise coming on. She is amazing. You were all going to love her. She is a medical intuitive, an energy healer, an intuitive counselor. She has been seen on film, radio, TV, conferences around the world. She's a producer. She's an author. She is the founder of the Institute of Applied Energetics. She's just amazing. I was actually, before I came on today, watching one of her YouTube videos where she talks about entity attachments, which is right up everybody's alley in here. So I hope you will tune in on the 20th of next month to catch her. And then in April, right now, we have Ellie scheduled to come back. We have Mike Huberty scheduled to come from American Ghost Walks. And we're already booking out into May with some fantastic guests. The cast of Red Road Paranormal will be joining us. So I hope you guys will stick around. We have some great topics. As always, if there's a topic that you want to hear about, let us know. If there's a guest you want us to try to book, let us know. If you want to be booked, email me. We are always looking for great conversation. All right, we have 4 cards. You can pick them in any order. You can say, hey, I want all 4. Maybe you just want 1 and 4. Whatever you feel drawn to. I like this. The first card is the Hummingbird Spirit. And actually, for me, when I see this card, the hummingbird is a symbol to me of one of my loved ones. And I feel like with this card right now, the message is really what Tim and I were just talking about. Don't pass up the simple signs. Take that, understand that there is still involvement from your loved ones from the other side. They are still around. If you have, they pop in your mind, take that. If you see something and it reminds you of them and it takes you to a happy memory or just makes you think of them, please accept those signs. Sometimes I feel like people think signs from a loved one have to be very poignant or very, this is you. Sometimes we tend to challenge those signs. I think about recently I lost somebody in my life, and I'm not usually one to question signs. And I had something happen and I found myself questioning that. And I'm like, I should know better, because the minute this happened, I thought about this person. So really just take those signs, be willing to take those signs and trust that feeling that you get. The second card is reflecting pool and stillness. But I got this card inverted. And when I'm looking at this card today, this tells me right now, there's somebody who maybe you are being still when you need to act. Okay. I feel like for somebody out there right now, this is not a time of inaction. I feel like, and what I'm actually seeing is get back on the hamster wheel. So I feel like there have been things that you are intentionally avoiding, but there is this action. I feel, and it's like, come on, let's get this show on the road. You need to step in. You need to follow your road is what I'm hearing. It's almost as if you are afraid to take part in your journey, even though you know this is the way you need to go. And trust. I feel like sometimes we don't necessarily want to jump in. We don't necessarily want to take action because we want to know, is this right? Is this the right thing to do? Oh my gosh, what if I do this and it backfires? But what if we do nothing, right? Think about it. I mean, even if you look at the simplest of quotes that aren't even metaphysical and you look at Wayne Gretzky, you miss 100% of the shots that you don't take. If you are not willing to step in and be an active part of your journey, those opportunities are not just going to open. We have to get out there. We have to try. We have to fight for things that we want in our life and manifest those things into our life. And I feel like this is this message. So if you were connecting with the second card, know that it's time for you to take an active part in getting to where you want to be. The third card I get is Wizard of the Woods, which represents focus. And again, this is another card that I pulled inverted. I feel like this is kind of tying into the last message, lack of focus. And I don't necessarily feel so much that it's lack of focus, but it's almost too many hands in the cookie jar. So I don't know if there's too many outside influences coming in and talking to you and giving you their perspectives. If it's you just have all these thoughts and don't know which thing to focus on because you're spread too thin. It's almost like grasping at straws. But you need to bring in some kind of focus and some kind of balance. And I'm seeing the need, back in middle school, making those pros and cons charts, seeing, comparing, contrasting, looking at those things. Now is the time to kind of sit and reflect and prioritize. I'm hearing prioritize. So prioritize is really going to be something that you need to do, and do it quickly, because I feel like as there's this lack of not knowing which way to go, it's like everything's zooming past. And so I feel like if you can start prioritizing, start even making lists and just getting things in order and organizing, it feels so chaotic. That's going to slow down that chaos that you're feeling. That's going to bring back that sense of balance and focus. And you're going to feel more accomplished because you're not going to be pulled or have so many voices giving you their opinions on what you need to be doing. Oh, and I like this one. This is the water spirit, manifesting dreams. Manifesting dreams. And this really kind of supports everything that we've been talking about here with the cards. We need to put out intention in things that we want and things that we want to bring into our life. I think so often now in society, There's maybe things that we want in our life and we're not sure why. Maybe it's the newest trend. There's things that we're like, oh, I think I should have that. But when I look at this card and manifesting dreams, I mean, sit down, connect with you, connect with your higher self, get to that root, right? That deep, vulnerable spot inside of you. What do you need? What do you need in your life? What do you need to manifest and bring forth? Changing our thoughts, making sure our thought patterns are positive, making sure that we're bringing in goodness, right? Because our words are power. So if we're always doing negative self-talk, guess what we're manifesting? If we're always saying, I can't, guess what we're manifesting? If we're always saying, you know what, that's not for me, or I'm never going to have as much money as I need, what are you manifesting? Now is a time where you can start to change those habits and you can say, I am strong, right? I have all that I need. I am powerful. I am successful. Manifest what you need at the very basic core level. Be your best self. Manifest for those around you that you love. It's all right there. It's all within your spiritual connection. But we have to really be aware of what we're feeding our minds and what we're feeding the world with our words and what we're feeding others. Sometimes we don't realize those things, but it's a big deal. On that note, everybody, I am so grateful for all of you that you tune in and sit down and have these conversations. This is why I'm here. I'm not here because I like talking to a camera. I'm here because I want to reach you. I want to help educate. I want to help try and answer questions. I want to bring in knowledge. I want to bring in guests like Tim. I want you to be able to find resources. So again, I cannot reiterate enough. If there's a topic you want to hear, if there's something you want to discuss, if anything, that's why we're here. So please shoot me that email, Stephanie Lynn Spirit Sensitive @gmail.com. If you haven't already subscribed to my YouTube channel, hop on over there and remember to like and follow me on Facebook. Thank you all. I'll see you again in 2 weeks. Take care.